Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for being part of this presentation. I feel very flattered. Today, I want to communicate the experience, and my clicker seems to be working. I want to share about our experience of implementing architectural supervision in the Positive Technologies company. My name is Dmitry Soluiko, and I'm the director of the Department of Developing Information System, Git Positive Technologies. Yep, when we first came to this company, it was a year and a half ago. We faced a situation that Positive Technologies is quite a large company. It's a growing company, and probably it still has this spirit of a startup, like a very entrepreneurial company. And it has over 25 product teams and over 100 services, over 2,000 IT professionals. And when we first came into the company, we saw that, the management were changing. We had to do the audit of IT systems in the company, and we saw that the company has certain issues which would be specific for growing companies. What I mean is that we did not have any service catalog in the company, and we had no idea of where the services are located, who deployed them before us, and when they did it, on what infrastructure. And I guess the problem or problems were specific, they were specific for the whole company. In particular, in our department, like when integration does not work, when you change a contract with an external party, and even suppliers may not know who the consumers are. There were some microservices, but it was like uncontrollable usage of microservices, and it was like a mix of technological stacks. They were different, especially in our directorate, because in our department we've had some proprietary software, and all of this means that you have very labor-intensive tech support and labor-intensive maintenance for the whole infrastructure. And given the fact that back at the time we had to develop several interconnected services, we did not want to follow the negative experience of many big companies like Amazon, Uber, and Netflix, and so on, who all have faced this problem of uncontrollable expansion of microservices in their companies. And we did not want for this whole architectural landscape to be like a sponge. You mean when teams are spending lots of time discussing how to better integrate among themselves and how to control the changes with their consumers and suppliers. And we came to an opinion that back at that stage we had to create a process of architectural supervision. Now, a couple of words about the goals. We wanted to control the process of architecture development, and we intended to see the overall architecture landscape of the company, meaning that there were the goals about calculating the services, maybe building some catalog of the services, then supervising and controlling technologies and processes related to integrations. Another important item, because we were the information security company, that we had to make sure that data the integration and apps would be secure by design, even before we roll it into production, and like we see, oops, we have some security problems, as it is usually happening with other entities. And eventually, the goal was to save on labor, to save on pen testing and support, and also to save on the integration expenses. And the main issue is like, okay, everything was invented before us. Why should we reinvent the wheel, so to speak? If we have those apps like Confluence, Nairo, and others which we know and love so much, but there are problems nevertheless, because everybody is drawing these architecture and diagrams in their own ways, and people have their own ideas about how it all should be and look. Yeah, there are some issues of getting approvals and version control, because yes, you have confusion, we have the different versions management, but it's hard to use it, and sometimes this version control may be absent altogether, and it brought us to the idea that basically you almost cannot control all of that. And also there are tools like Archimate and other tools, very specialized ones, that have been created to be able to follow the architectural development, but they also have some problems because there is a high threshold for teams and no standard notations. And reality is different with the designing, because you don't have the right path of development. It's not a code. You cannot interpret it. This is pretty much binary, and of course you cannot like disintegrate it. Or on the other hand, we have our current reality, programming reality, when modern practice of development is coding at each stage. I mean, the code for applications, delivery codes, testing by the code, infrastructure is also being deployed by the code. Then why can't architecture also be a code? So the IT trans developments are the code management and the follow interpretation of this code into something, to make it something more visual. And as it turned out, there are quite many tools for the code representation. One of them, Plan QML. Basically, you can take any QML diagram and represent it as a code. One of the examples would be the transition diagrams, and this is the diagram of it shows how the system is kind of morphing one into the other, and you can see that in several lines you can build this diagram without thinking about the arrows, and this would be just a pure help for an architect, without even bothering about formatting and how you locate these boxes. This software is generating the way it should be, and it works with any common IDE. No problems with this. Also, Plan QML is supporting C4 notation. It's a quite common notation, and they position themselves as a very simple tools for creating architectural solutions. On the left, you can see on the slide that we are identifying some borders of context, connections, storage systems, and it's quite easy to build up this kind of flowchart or diagram. As for documentation, you can use the most popular tool, Markdown, the name of it. Not only it enables you to format the text, you can also insert some videos and table data, links, and also plan of QML diagram. This also can be rendered very well. Since we've defined that architecture can be a code, for the code management, we need a tool to be able to manage this code. And I think we've chosen GitLab. mostly for its convenience of working with changes and approvals for changes. And and at this slide, I show how the work in GitLab is happening. It's basically branching, creating threads from the main tree, and then making changes and getting approvals, and then bringing them back into the main thread. To be very short. As for the tools, we've made a decision. The list of the tools is quite wide. I mean, those you can use for dealing with architecture as a code. Then we thought about how to structure this code and also how to structure storage of this architecture. We were inspired by the C4 notation, which is basically like nesting dolls, Russian nesting dolls, in terms of level of representation of the architecture. So each of these levels is a detail of the previous one, and out of this context diagram you can dive deeper into container one. You can see the components of each of the systems, and then go down to the codes. From the organizational level, you can dive into all the way to the code level. DDD, domain driven design approach, is an approach for designing the subject area, enabling one to define those context borders, out of which you later on create domains and subdomains of the services themselves. And also the process of building this model of the subject area called storming, event storming. We've been using this quite a lot, and it helps us to build architectural decision very easy, understanding business process, and the methodology itself is saying that the development guys should be speaking the same language with the business guys, not on the developers guys, but on the language of the subject area. And we are going to look at some examples later on. So what the structure of a repository should look like for the architecture. We were also guided by the DDD methodology that says that you have to divide the domain area, and basically each of the catalogs in the repository should be repeating the structure of the organization. Now, well, basically, this is not a brand new solution. We did not come up with this. We simply used it, seeing how other large companies have been using the same approach, but of course we've corrected it for our own needs, and we were able to assemble all of these approaches, and this is what we came up with. We got quite a big process. I mean, we collected the structure and the tools and rolled out this whole process, what it should be looking like. So an employee is talking about the domains with their boss or with a technical supervisor, or they're discussing some idea. They first build a draft of the so-called architectural design, ADR. That is, they're building this thread in the architectural repository, introducing changes, and then approve it with their own architects, and then sort of like escalates this decision for the special body, which is architectural committee. I will give you the breakdown of the committee later on. And here also launching the approval process. Basically, it's like a merge request in GitLab. It's there's a special procedure, and you have some like approval body and the approval person from the architectural committee. They have a certain description and also a name for it. So after that, there is usually a discussion in GitLab. In GitLab, actually, you have a very great tool for reviewing changes and for providing commands. All of this is happening actually quite fast, and then a decision is made. If there are some outstanding questions or decision cannot be made, then we escalate it to a regular meeting of the architectural committee. Now, currently, it is taking place every 2 weeks. And only after a decision is made, we launch the development. I mean, not before the architectural decision, but after. No, architectural committee or supervision, you don't have to pass it every time, but only when you build a service and maybe microservices, or when some material changes are taking place in the service which affect, or maybe affecting other teams, which somehow are integrated with this service. Now let's move on to the composition of the architecture committee. These are architects of the divisions or departments, then also heads of the quality assurance departments and DevOps, infrastructure, and also information security guys. And also, I guess you can see that some other stakeholders which are part of the integration, they also need to understand how this whole, communication network is going to change, and also external suppliers that can be those stakeholders. They could also be a part of the architecture supervision, be part of the architecture committee. But first we need to sign an NDA with them, and it usually takes to write in the contract that they will be a part of this process. Otherwise, usually they say, no, we don't want to be a part of it. So if any item of this is missing, usually we delegate it to a team responsible for that, or to a domain architect. And so the architectural committee is basically an open group of members who, like any employee, can be a part of this committee if they express their desire to do so and have an impact on the architecture design of the company. Now, what are the focus areas? We control the common patterns of development. We control whether there is a correct integration between services and whether it in line with the technological radar of the company, lest they choose the stack they prefer, and harmony with the architectural standards and decisions which have been adopted earlier in the company, like domain standards or overall company standards, and also operational risks. And of course, the information security department is looking at the cybersecurity level of the solution and integration. And also what it's going to look like. SLA, we have 4 days to make a decision. And sometimes we have delays. We have the charts of escalation for the domain architects, and after my presentation we can also catch up and talk about that. Now, what is a part of architecture solution? We've built a template that has all the problems or problem description and solution description, because oftentimes, there is no problem. You simply want to build some kind of a service. And all these diagrams I've shown so far, they are part of this template, and the links, and also description of contracts, if we have any interactions, what kind of technologies, metadata that has been used, planned resources which you may need, authorization, authentication, the full description of this solution, which will give us like a top-level understanding of why this solution is needed in the first place. These architecture solutions fall under the 2 categories. Category 1 would be I need, which is built when the service is first being created. All these things are being described. And the second type or kind of the solution is the one which is introducing some changes. This is easier because this could be like 1 or a couple of files that will be affected by changes, and otherwise you don't need to write anything else. Let's go to such an architecture decision. It's a diagram of the C4, and it shows you the borders of the context. This is the System 5A, which is managing our infrastructure, and also the standing of the company.
We see which systems it integrates with. We can take a look at the user roles and how many users, and it's a multi-level diagram. If you drill down, you can see container-based diagrams, which details it. So we see the containers that composes it. It's more technology-based. It shows the technologies being used, the interactions between containers, also how users interact with containers. We don't use other detailed diagrams to save work effort. So we stop L1, L2, and C4, don't going beyond. Then we can go through sequence diagrams. That's a real-life diagram. It's also interactive. You can drill down. This cannot be done. So the usage option diagram, another UML diagram that allows describing the ways of using the functionality. A mandatory, or let's say an important part of the architecture solution is contracts, their descriptions. We need contracts to register agreements between of interactions between subsystems. We prefer those contracts. They don't break the previous versions, but should that happen, we change attributes, their names, types, and naturally we have to warn our subscribers, our users, and to do that, you should at least know them. Before this, nobody had known them. So therefore, our process implies version control of contracts, and we use several types of contracts. Well, there are quite a lot of them, but we only use 3. For synchronous interactions, we use YAML, an open API format. This is the way it looks in GitLab as a Swagger. As a user UI, you can even try it out. And for the event-based integration, we use Protobuf and JSON to work with Kafka. One can't help dwelling on the business process or model, event storming. This is a real-life example. We can see for context, we can see differences between these contexts, the complexity of the context, how users interact with these contexts, the interfaces that need to be used, and in which context they all will exist. And therefore, you can actually assess the composition of teams and define at a high level the solution. Actually, I'm not going to go into detail about event storming because it's a subject for a separate presentation. So should you have any questions, we can have an offline conversation. But we use event storming quite broadly in development. As I've already mentioned, the users or employees who want an architecture decision to be made get an approval for the committee. It's done through a merge request into GitLab. This is the way it looks. It contains a certain composition, a certain set of approval issues. For instance, it also determines if enough votes have been accepted. For instance, the group of architects consists of 6 architects, and you need at least 3 for this approval to take place. And this approval taking place means that a minimally required number of votes has been cast in this for this RFC. Correspondingly, the merging of this RFC into the branch means that we allow this architecture decision to be sent to development. Also, the architecture solution, architectural decision, becomes a reason for further actions such as investigations, justifications, authority being assigned to the team, and so on and so forth. And based on the architecture decision, the following versions are created. And in addition to these architecture decisions from teams, the architecture committee also accepts and considers the drafting of standards. Any participant in the architecture committee can initiate a domain standard or a company standard. The procedure of adoption is exactly the same. It's just it lies either in the ArchHot route or in the domain route. So these are examples of standards adopted in our department. For instance, the REST API standard, the standard services, contracts, and buckets. We have a standard for the cybersecurity of applications and a standard defining how we interact with brokers. So 77 decisions have been made over the year. 7 were denied, were rejected, and now we have 5 architecture decisions under consideration and 3 drafts. Apart from adopting architecture decisions, the regular architecture committee meeting, which happens once every 2 weeks, discusses all sorts of problems that the department is facing. Professionals are sharing their experience using some technologies, and some other discussions are being conducted. So it's not just about accepting architecture decisions. Unless we can accept an architecture decision asynchronously, we launch it into a synchronous discussion right at this meeting. So what did the implementation of architecture supervision or oversight give us? So we got real control over the creation of new services. We got the current understanding of the architecture landscape, at least within our department. We got a low entry threshold for the teams because it's quite easy to master this tool, and teams do use it. We don't allow integration collisions. We have contracts. We abide by these contracts. We run audits of these contracts. We use them in the integrations. We do version control, and we don't have collisions happening. And if they do happen, there's a process that can be used to resolve them. We bring down the workload, the effort for testing, for the design of integrations. I can give you a number. Well, after the presentation, if you're interested. So we've got some unified technology radar because we're collecting metadata from these architecture decisions. I mean, on the technologies being used. And somehow we got general technology awareness. And what's most important is that teams started to understand their own products better. They used it as like a hint that they need to understand their technology better. Of course, there's some overhead to make these architecture decisions and to get them adopted. to meet SLAs, but I think we've discussed all the pros and cons here. The bottom line is that we like this approach better than what we used to have. It's more or less transparent and controllable. After some period of use, we got a lot of ideas to develop this approach further. We accumulated some pool of architecture descriptions. And one other advantage of this approach is that you can convert this data anywhere you want. We can create a catalog of services. We can create some visualization of this radar. There are special tools for that. For instance, Backstage Doc Hub, that is being used quite broadly in Russia. And correspondingly, this will help us attract a broader audience, including not only developers, architects, and systems analysts, but maybe also business analysts who are thinking about the application side of the service. That basically brings me to the end of what I was planning to say. If our experience is going to be useful to you, or there are some subtle points that you would like to discuss, these are my contact details, Telegram and an email. I'm always online. I'll be able to answer your questions. So that's basically all I wanted to say. Thank you for your attention. I have a QR code using which you can vote for this presentation. And I'm ready for questions. Colleagues, questions to Dima. Okay, I see some questions already. Dima, let me just have a drink.
Добрый день.
Hello. First, thank you very much for such an easy-to-understand presentation and at the same time so comprehensive one regarding the architecture. As to my question, you mentioned that the SLA to make a decision is 4 days. I'd like to drill down into this question, asking how do you control the SLA execution regarding the adoption of architecture decisions? Very good question. First, we have an administrator that keeps an eye on that. That's the domain architect. And he is the one to administer this process. Second, we have an idea to set up a special board that will automatically generate tasks on the start of consideration of an architecture decision. And this way, I think, we will create yet another channel to notify the approvers. And perhaps it's the responsibility of each one of them. I believe that our employees who are members in the architecture committee are responsible persons. They are not arbitrarily selected to join it, and I think we'll cope with it. Of course, there's always room for improvement. The deadlines are sometimes broken, but I think we're coping with it, and the statistic is quite good. About 100 architecture decisions considered over the year. Thank you. Can you bring the QR code back? Well, I don't know how to do that. Just press back. I pressed, but it's too late. The moment is gone. The boat has left. More questions? Hello. My question is, how you monitor and keep under control that the developers have really implemented what you described in the architecture? Do you verify? Of course we do. We run an audit of what has been implemented, and also they'll come to pen testing after they're done developing their solution, because Our company specializes in information security, and we have this condition that solutions should be released for production. And there's this pen testing phase, so they'll come to pen testing, and if they've done their work poorly, they'll have a problem passing. And it's in they know, they're aware of that, and it's in their interest that the code should pass these tests. Also, the creation of an architecture decision is not where it ends. Changes happen in contracts and approaches, new services being developed, and if they come with a decision that is not a fit, then questions will be asked. Why last time you were blaming something else? Well, basically, the process works quite well. At least our teams know that you can't get away with declaring one thing and implementing another. Well, sometimes developers can make a certain change that you won't learn about. I'm sure you have cases like this. Look, architecture oversight only covers important changes or services. We're absolutely not interested in internal changes. But if they start impacting other teams, it's 100% that we'll learn about that, because other teams will come to us and say, look, we have this integration, it doesn't work. So only in this case, they will make an architecture decision, and that will allow reducing the workload on the teams themselves. And secondly, how to put it? Secondly, they'll arrive with some specific idea. Put it this way, we're not positioning ourselves as a body to ban things. We are positioning ourselves as a guiding body that explains the best practices, what to do to pass the pen testing, and the teams are interested in passing them. There's a question here and at the back as well.
Dmitry, спасибо.
Dmitry, thank you. Very exciting presentation. I'm joining to what the lady said, asking the question. Do you have your own questions? Yes, I do. We have time for any number of questions to you. Any number. Well, of course, some of them are better to be discussed on sidelines. So my question is, you told us about your use GI, how do you work in MRs, how approvals happen. Do you have conflicts in branches, and how do you cope with them? Well, of course, conflicts do happen, but very rarely. Because the DDD approach says that every domain should be separated and should have low connectivity. So because of this, the teams implement the decisions or make the decisions for the most part sequentially. A second, GitLab allows us resolving all our conflicts. It's a very usable tool, and I'm sure all developers have used this functionality. So conflicts do happen, but we manage to resolve them successfully. Thank you. And there was another question at the end of the room. Thank you very much. The presentation has been really exciting. I just wanted to have one thing clarified. Look, when you do this architecture process, it's a very useful solution for projects that are quite established and for which you more or less know how they're going to be developed further. But what do you offer, what practices you have for some really new solutions for which it's not yet it clear, how to embed them, that can also be very quickly integrated in order to find the right approach, to accumulate some good experience, and then, based on this experience, to understand how to do the integration to this large-scale architecture to get a stable solution. Well, look, firstly, there's a draft. You create a draft, and if you have changes every week, and it happens, you can send these changes by batch. So accumulating them and then send for consideration, not necessarily every week. Second, I am not sure that such important changes happen every week over a large span of time. In any event, we are keeping under control some large-scale external integrations, the creation of new services, and that's it, nothing else. Whatever is happening inside, we don't care about that. We have standards for the teams. Have a recommendation power. We do not ban releasing products if some REST calls don't meet the standards. We just help making this product release procedure less costly. So, for instance, we have several stages, including pen testing that I mentioned, that are very hard to pass. And in my memory, not a single application has passed pen testing from the first attempt. But we actually managed to reduce the workload considerably. For instance, for pen testing, the reports used to measure in 100 pages, and now this average number of pages has gone down to 20. It's a big advantage, and so we basically don't use scripts. So this is a great result. Because, like for instance, external systems have a real hard time going through pen testing, whereas inside we manage. This regards deployment and some other patterns that you don't need to rework later. The integration is also becoming very transparent if you keep to the process. So, in answering your question, yes, we propose that you accumulate changes in drafts. We propose that you discuss these decisions with your architects beforehand, but if they need to be adopted all the time, we're doing it all the time. We have a 4-day SLA and we're fitting into it.